guys, I placed first place on one of the songs in a Just Dance tournament today. Like, out of 170 people who were all dancing to this one song at the same time, worldwide, I had the highest score. I had the highest score. Like, I literally peaked. Nothing in my life will ever, there's nothing I can do to like feel this euphoria, to feel this again, because I've peaked and it only goes downhill from there. There's literally nothing I can do to top this achievement for the rest of my life, except maybe win a whole tournament. Hey everybody, welcome to the Lo-Fi Book Cafe. I am Shy and I am standing up today because it's that kind of day. We're just gonna be standing, probably swaying. It's all good. It's all good. We're here. Here's the top half of my bookshelf. We're good. Today I am here to bring you my TBR for the r/fantasy 2021 book bingo. Now r/fantasy is a subreddit, right? So a community on Reddit that deals with the fantasy book genre. It's like 1 million people strong and it's expanded. Although the name is r/fantasy, it has since expanded to include speculative fiction as a whole, right? Kind of bringing in sci-fi, bringing in horror, and also bringing in the understanding that genre boundaries often fluctuate, right? There are often books that kind of dance between sci-fi, fantasy, romance, right? And kind of pull in a lot of different things. So it's not strictly fantasy, but it is kind of speculative fiction as a whole. And so the theme of the yearly book bingo is it's a year-long challenge where you are encouraged to kind of get out of your comfort zone and read new books that fall under this speculative fiction category, but fulfill prompts, right? As you do with a book bingo. I will walk you through the prompts as well as a few of the rules because in this case, the rules do impact my TBR. But if you are interested, I do encourage you to visit the subreddit, right? As well as visit the official rule page and you can get some fun graphics, some fun bingo cards, etc., right? Now, as a reminder, we are doing speculative fiction. So there are some times that you're gonna be like,
hey Shy, this is a book that isn't fantasy.
And I'm gonna be like,
hey, drink my blood.
So one of the big rules is that there are no repeat authors allowed on your board. You are also not allowed to double up on prompts. So there are 25 prompts to be completed. So that is 25 books, but however, this is a year-long reading challenge, basically running from the end of March 2021 to April 2022, right? So you have some time to fit in these books, right? To fit in books that maybe you were planning on reading for different readathons or just later in the year. You have time to fit in these books, but you are not allowed to repeat authors or books on the board. You do have one reread allowed. The goal of the challenge is to move out of your comfort zone and try new things, right? Which kind of, if you're only reading books you've already read, defeats the purpose. But you do have the opportunity to reread one book. You have one substitution from a previous board allowed. What this means is that if there is a prompt you are not interested in completing, you may substitute it with a prompt from a previous year's board. Now, again, you can go to the r/fantasy community to find this. There are tons of boards, tons of years. This is a very long running challenge. So there are tons of different prompts you can incorporate. And I did take advantage of this in my TBR. I did substitute out a prompt. And finally, there are hard mode options available for all prompts. What this means is that you will get the prompt and then there will be a little bit of an extra challenge to the prompt, right? You are welcome to complete hard mode for any of the prompts, for all of the prompts, or for none of the prompts. It's really just if you're looking for an extra challenge. So when I take you through my TBR, I will tell you the prompt, I will indicate the hard mode prompt, and I will also indicate whether or not the book that I picked fulfills the hard mode prompt. Okay, so I know that was a lot of rules. Quick and easy. We got it, guys. We got it. We're so good. We're ready to do this. Let's go through some prompts. This is like my 20th take of this video. This video does not want to be filmed, but that's not going to stop me. No, No, it's not. Because I'm doing this challenge. And this video is me holding myself accountable. Because if I put this out there, I'm telling myself I'm going to complete this challenge. So we're going to go through all these prompts. And we're going to start with prompt number 1. For our first prompt, we will be reading 5 science fiction and fantasy short stories. For hard mode, you can read an entire anthology or collection of short stories. And I will be reading Trust No One, which is a collection of X-Files stories that see Mulder and Scully reunited and solving a whole new generation of cases. For prompt number 2, we have a book set in Asia or an Asian-inspired fantasy setting. Hard mode is a book written by an Asian author. So for hard mode, I will be reading Wicked Fox by Kat Cho, which is set in Seoul. And this follows Mi-young, who is a gumiho. This is a 9-tailed fox who basically has to feast on the life force of men in order to survive. But she encounters a certain boy named Ji-hoon, and instead of eating him like she's supposed to, she saves him. Controversy. Next up, we have a book from the r/fantasy A to Z genre guide, which you can find on the subreddit. Hard mode is a book written by an author of color. I will be reading Dread Nation by Justina Ireland, which is the first in a duology that is an alternate retelling of the Civil War that sees Black and Indigenous children being trained from a young age to fight the zombies that have emerged. Now we have to read a book with a found family, and hard mode is where one of the members of the found family identifies as being queer. So I will be reading The Black Veins by Ashia Monet. This is a story that follows 16-year-old Blythe, who discovers that she is a guardian, one of 7 people in the world who have these incredible magical powers, and she has to go on a road trip in order to save her parents and find the rest of the guardians, right? And I believe a few of the guardians do identify as queer. I know for a fact one of them is bisexual. I believe Blythe herself is bi, and a few of them I do believe also identify as queer. For our next prompt, we will be reading a book that features a first-person point of view. And hard mode is a book that features multiple first-person point of views. So this book does not fulfill the hard mode prompt, but I have been meaning to read it, especially since I do have the second one as well, which is A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. And I do need to talk for a second about how gorgeous this cover is, because look at this duology cover. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right this second? From the girls facing each other to the flipping of where the gold and where the silver font is. I'm just in awe. I'm just in awe. So I will be reading both of these, but since there are no repeat authors, I can only have one count for the challenge, so I will be counting A River of Royal Blood. This duology takes place in a North African-inspired fantasy world where dark magic kind of looms, and Eva is trained from a young age in order to fight her older sister Issa to the death, and whichever of them wins will ascend to become the queen of their nation. Next up, we have an r/fantasy book club pick. So this can be any book that the r/fantasy book club has read for a readathon, for a reading challenge, for a monthly challenge, basically any book that they've put on their Goodreads bookshelf. And if you want to complete hard mode, you have to read a book that they are currently reading and participate in those discussions. So I may end up choosing a different book depending on what books they pick further down the line, but as of right now, my plan is to read Neon Yang's The Black Tides of Heaven novella series. I know literally next to nothing about this series, but I did pre-order the upcoming collection that has them all bound together in one edition. So when it comes out, I'm gonna be reading it and I'm very excited to try it out. For our next prompt, we are going to be reading a book by an author that is new to you. So you've never read them before, right?
I'm Captain Obvious.
And hard mode is if you really don't know much about this author at all. So I'm going to be completing hard mode by reading The Wolf of Oren Yarrow by K.S. Vioso. All I know is that this is apparently a really, really cool trilogy. and it's the first in the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen series, and the third one's supposed to come out soon, and the cover art is gorgeous, and I'm very much here for it. Our next prompt is a gothic fantasy. Now, in the book bingo announcement, the r/fantasy team included a link to a Book Riot article that gives 10 examples of gothic fantasy books. In order to complete hard mode for this prompt, you have to pick a book that is not included in the Book Riot article. So I will be reading Darker Still, which is the first book in the Magic Most Foul trilogy by Leanna Renee Heber. And it has a really pretty holographic cover that I don't know if my ring light will do justice, but I don't know too much about this book, but I believe there's a haunted painting involved. So I'm down. All right, for our next selection, we have a backlist book. So how this is defined is a book that is published by an author who is still writing books, but this series is complete. And hard mode for this prompt is a book that was published before the year 2000. So I'm going to be reading The 100,000 Kingdoms, which is the first book in the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, who I basically just want to read everything that she's written, and I haven't yet. So, starting with The 100,000 Kingdoms, again, don't know too much about this, but I know it has to do with a girl who does not know that she is an heir to one of these kingdoms, but then suddenly finds out that she is. And we take it from there. Where'd my book go? I can't read.
Hi, welcome back to Katie Can't Read. I'm Katie.
I can't read. Next up, we have a book with a revenge-seeking character. And hard mode is a book where this revenge is central to the plot of the whole book. So this book does complete hard mode, and I will be reading Queen of the Conquered by Kaysen Callender. Don't know too much about this one as well, but I know it's a girl who is getting revenge on the rulers of her island who killed off her family, kind of like the colonizers who came in and killed off her family, and so she's using her powers to kind of get revenge on those people. You're gonna see a common theme in this video, and it's that if I don't have the book in front of me, I don't know what it's about. For our next book, we are reading a book with a... My head is just empty. All right, my friends, now we are coming up on a book with a mystery plot, and hard mode is a book that is not a primary world urban fantasy. So I'm going to be reading Behind the Throne by KB Wagers. Where'd my book go? You guys, I lost my book. Where's my book? I will be reading Behind the Throne by KB Wagers, which is basically if Han Solo accidentally became the ruler of a galactic empire. I love the protagonist already just from the few chapters that I've managed to get into this book, but basically our main character, Hale, is suddenly the heir to an empire, and she has to figure out who killed her father as well as other certain members of her family. And it is not an urban fantasy, it is actually a sci-fi space opera set in space. Next up, we have a comfort read. Now, remember when I said earlier that you get one reread throughout the entire challenge? The comfort read square is a bit of an exception. So you are allowed to reread a book for a comfort read, and it does not count towards your one comfort read, because how would you know it's a comfort read if you haven't read it yet? However, hard mode is reading a comfort read that you haven't read yet, but you think might become a new comfort read. So I am taking the hard mode by reading The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I haven't read anything by Becky Chambers. I haven't read anything in the Wayfarer series, but from what I have heard, this team of space misfits, they're just apparently really lovely and really wonderful. So I've been meaning to read this for a while and got a really good deal on it on the Kindle. So hopefully this will become a new comfort read. Now we have a book published in 2021, and hard mode is if this book is also the author's debut novel. So while this is not a hard mode book, I will be reading Lore by Alexandra Bracken. I really need to read this because I bought it for a challenge and then I didn't read it for the challenge and now it's sitting. And the longer I have it, the more I'm worried I'm not gonna like it because it has very mixed reviews, but it has a really nice cover. Lore follows, Lore. As punishment for a past rebellion, 9 Greek gods are forced to walk the earth as mortals. They are hunted by the descendants of ancient bloodlines, all eager to kill a god and seize their divine power and immortality. And basically, Lore is one of these descendants who is not interested in seizing divine power or immortality, but she has to make a pact with Athena, who is one of the last original gods, and together, hopefully they can take down a new bad god and also like stop something. For the Lion Squasher prompt, I will be reading The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I got it on audiobook. I actually used an Audible credit on this because I was like, there's no way I'm gonna finish this in time for a Libby or a Hoopla rental because it's like 20 or 30 hours. Because it's really long, because it's over 800 pages. So yeah, I don't know anything about this actually, but the Audible sample sounded really nice. And it's one of those books that I think, as someone who doesn't read high fantasy very often, I think I would have trouble distinguishing names and places if I saw them written down. But it sounds like the narrator does a really good job of using different voices and different inflections to distinguish different characters, which is something I think will help me very much.
A few moments later.
We're halfway there! Halfway there! Halfway there! For our next prompt, we are reading a science fiction fantasy nonfiction. Hard mode is one that was published within the last 5 years. However, as a grad student, I get enough nonfiction in my life, so I decided to exercise my one substitution of a prompt for this prompt. Instead of reading this nonfiction book, I will be reading an asexual and/or a romantic speculative fiction book. Hard mode if the protagonist is asexual and/or a romantic. So I'm finally breaking out This Golden Flame by Emily Victoria. You may remember that I got this book in the Rainbow Crate asexual themed loot box, and our protagonist Karis is actually Aro Ace, so she fulfills this on both counts. Now we are at a book written by a Latinx or Latin American author. Hard mode is if this book has less than 1,000 Goodreads ratings. So while this book does not fulfill the hard mode prompt, I am going to finally be reading Miss Meteor. Miss Meteor is written by Taylor K. Mejia and Anna Marie McLemore, and it has the most beautiful cover art I've ever seen in my entire life. And Lita Perez, who is our lovely beauty queen contestant here, actually came to Earth on a meteor. She is an alien, and she is going to compete in the local beauty pageant with the help of her ex-best friend Chicky. And it looks so cute. It looks so cute. And you guys, this cover and this jacket art, what the heck? I love it so much. For our next prompt, we have a self-published work, and hard mode is if it has fewer than 50 Goodreads ratings. I believe at the time of this recording that this book does have fewer than 50 Goodreads ratings, so we're counting it as hard mode, but I will be reading Seasons of Albadone by Elan Marché and Chris Warman. And I don't know too much about this book, but it is a fantasy that involves, as the title suggests, different stories that are kind of interwoven through these 4 seasons. Next up is a book in a forest setting, and hard mode is if basically the book takes place entirely in this forest. While not hard mode to my understanding, I'm going to be reading We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal. At least part of this book takes place in the cursed forest of the Ars. I'm not sure to what extent this cursed forest features in the book, but it seems to be pretty important. So we're gonna count it. We're gonna count it because I've been dying to read this. I've been dying to read this for so long. So we're gonna count it. Next up is a genre mashup book, which is a book that is at least 2 genres. Hard mode is a book that is at least 3 different genres. So I'm going to be reading my copy of Gideon the Ninth that Rachel from Shipwrecked Library so lovingly gifted me. And from what I understand, Gideon the Ninth is like 6 different genres all fighting to the death in a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit. So I think there's no better book that I could read for this prompt. Now we are at a book with chapter titles, and hard mode is if these chapter titles are longer than a single word. So this book does count for hard mode, and I will be rereading for my one reread, Daughter of Smoke and Bone. Let me tell you about Daughter and Smoke and Bone. I, for the longest time, swore off Laini Taylor as an author because of how much I disliked Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I read it when the first cover was out, right? And then I saw these covers come out, and I was like, dang, I want this book. And then I was like, oh, but I hated it so much. And then I thought about it, and I was like, what did I hate about this book? And literally the only thing I could remember was that the girl had blue hair. That was it, right? So then fast forward to me being at Half Price Books one day. I'm minding my own damn business, and I see all of a sudden a book on the shelf, and it's called like Eyes Like Stars, and the girl on the front has blue hair. And I literally, like, my third eye opened in the middle of this Half Price Books, and I realized, oh my God, that's the book with the blue haired girl that I hated so much. It was never Daughter of Smoke and Bone. It was that book the whole time. But I know I read Daughter of Smoke and Bone like years ago when it came out. So why do I not remember it? Because I never finished the series. And why would I have not finished the series? There's something that kept me from finishing this series, and I literally have zero recollection of this whatsoever. I could not tell you a single thing about this except the girl has blue hair, and it was that forgettable to me for some reason that I literally mixed it up with another book. So I carried this grudge against Laini Taylor in this series for so long for nothing. I mean, maybe I actually didn't like it for a reason, I don't know, but I'm gonna reread this, I guess. I'm counting this as a reread because apparently I've read this. Now we have a book where the title follows the format X of Y, such as Six of Crows, for example. And hard mode is a book that follows the title X of Y and Z, right? And I think we kind of laugh sometimes about how a lot of fantasy books fall into that rut, that title rut. So it can have little kind of filler words at the beginning, such as a or the, for example. So for the hard mode prompt, I am going to be reading A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. This is the first in a duology, with the second part coming out, I believe, in December, that I'm really interested in reading. I don't know too much about it aside from the fact that there are wraiths. So, but I've heard really good things. So again, the point of this challenge is to read books that you don't know, and the fact that I don't know means that it is a perfect book to read right now. Next up is a book with first contact, meaning it is a book where humans and aliens have their first interaction with each other. And hard mode is if war does not break out as a result. I don't know if this is hard mode or not. My plan right now is to read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I kind of went back and forth on this one because I know some people who like adore this book, and I also know some people who are like, this is the worst book I've ever read, and some people who were like, this was a good book, but it could have been like 300 pages shorter. But I did get a free Audible credit, so I used it. Again, just kind of like The Priory of the Orange Tree, this is a book that I think I would rather read on Audible because the narrator seems to do a really good job with different voices and different characters, but it is a 30+ hour audiobook, and there is no way that I can finish that in a 2 to 3 week period. So for me, checking it out from the library was not an option, which is where I do all my audiobooks, but the Audible credit came in handy. And then I canceled my free trial. So I'll be reading To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. If somebody wants to tell me if that's hard mode or not, go ahead. I mean, I guess maybe that's a spoiler, so I don't know. I don't know. Also, do you like this book? Let me know. I have no ties to it yet, so let me know. All right, now we have a book with a trans or non-binary character. And the hard mode version is that this character is the protagonist of their book. I don't know how I haven't read this book yet, but I finally get the chance to read Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I don't know how I haven't read it yet either, but I'm gonna read it now, so it's okay. For our second to last prompt, we have an author's debut novel, and the hard mode version is if this author has participated in an AMA on Reddit. So the r/fantasy has an entire list of authors that have participated in AMAs, which makes it really easy to find which ones have and haven't. So this does count for hard mode, but I will be reading and actually have started reading Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. And you guys, this book is so good. And I mean that sincerely. I'm on audiobook, which also I highly recommend. And I'm like 7 chapters in, 8 chapters in, I'm not sure. I'm 2 hours into a 13-hour audiobook, and I already know that this is gonna be a 5-star. And I'm like, whoa, that's nice. This book is just absolutely stunning. This book is just absolutely stunning. And I don't wanna say too much about it because I went into it really just blind, not knowing much about it. And for me, kind of uncovering the things as the book goes along has been such an incredible way to read it. So if you don't know anything about Raybearer, be like me and go into it absolutely blind. Just read it and just let your mind be blown. And finally, we have for our very last prompt, a book with witches. Hard mode is if this witch is the protagonist of their book. And in order to complete hard mode, I will be reading The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. I don't know anything about this series, but I've been meaning to read Rin Chupeco for a hot second. I'm gonna read the whole trilogy, but again, only the first book counts. Only one book can count. So let's make it the one with witch in the title. All right, guys, this is it. Finally, the video that literally took 2 hours to film. Why did it take 2 hours to film? I couldn't tell you. The second that I decided to stand instead of sitting today, literally everything went wrong, but we're done. Now, this is my first time competing in the r/fantasy book bingo challenge. So if you have already done this challenge, or if you are planning to do this challenge as well, I would love to know. Please let me know so we can keep each other accountable. I would also love to know if you have different books that you're going to be reading for the prompts that I talked about, or if you have read some of the books that I've talked about for a different reason, and if you have some thoughts, good thoughts or bad thoughts, let me know. And as always, I will be here putting my life back in order in the Lo-Fi Book Cafe.